Brought to you by Allstate, whose policies now include protection for your home, your family, as well as your car. You're in good hands with Allstate. And now, let's all play What's My Line?
And now let's meet our award-winning panel of What's My Line. First, the delightful star of stage and television, Miss Arlene Francis.
And now, I am sure the youngest publisher of the most successful magazine, Playboy, and he himself is such a success story that a picture is going to be made of his young life very soon, and himself will be played by Tony Curtis. I'd like you to meet Hugh Hefner.
And on my left, What's My Line's own playmate, the noted Broadway columnist, Dorothy Kilgallen.
I don't know about the youngest publisher, but there's a pretty snappy one on my left, and every word in Playboy magazine is in one of his books, the American College Dictionary, Mr. Bennett, Cerf.
Well, with Mr. Hefner here, I guess you can guess who are going to be the July and August playmates. And here's a man who does for the news what Mr. Hefner does for girls, John Charles Daly.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to What's My Line. I think that this is probably a significant Sunday because I feel quite sure that spring arrived today. All of my colleagues on the panel are in bright, good humor, and I anticipate they'll stay that way for about 5 minutes. We have some very interesting occupations, and we've got some nice people who are waiting to bring them out here to let the panel puzzle around with them. We'll also have a famous mystery guest a little bit later in the program, and we'll meet our first challenger after this word. And now let's meet our first contestant. Will you enter and sign in, please? Dan Snyder, right? There's spring in the air, Dan. You hear such fine, spontaneous applause. Where are you from?
Kramer, Indiana.
Kramer, Indiana. Well, it's nice to have you with us. May I present our panel? Mr. Snyder, will you join me over here? Dan, do you know how we keep score?
Yes, sir.
All right, then let's let the audience in the theater and the folks watching at home know exactly what your line is. All right, panel, we can tell you that Mr. Snyder deals in a service and that he's self-employed, and we'll begin the general questioning with Arlene Francis.
Well, Mr. Snyder, is there anything that you do that might entertain any of us, that we might come and watch you or enjoy seeing you at work?
No.
1 down and 9 to go, Mr. Hefner.
Does the company that you work for, is it a profit-making organization?
Yes, sir.
Does this service that you supply, is it something that I might be interested in?
Possibly.
Is it something that is used by both men and women?
Yes, sir.
There are very many other people in the same line of work.
Well, that's hard, I think, to put in, specific definition. Let us say that it's a line of work which is practiced by others, where there is a circumstance which makes it viable, wouldn't you say so?
I think so.
Yeah. Apparently there's something kind of special about the particular service that you do. Do you do this service in the city of New York?
No, sir.
2 down and 8 to go, Miss Kilgallen.
Mr. Snyder, when you're working, do you wear something other than a business suit?
Yes, ma'am.
Would it be considered a work suit of some kind?
Well, I mean, work clothes, I mean, do you want to hold it to the issue of whether it's a suit or not? Because I'd have to discuss with Mr. Snyder then whether, you know, it has the form and substance of a suit.
Well, if I could prevent a discussion, John, I'd love to.
Fine. They are work clothes. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Well, are there pants involved?
Yes.
Well, John raised the issue. I figured he didn't work in a skirt.
As a matter of fact, when he's had a long and very busy day, he sometimes is panting by the end of the day. I had to get it in before Bennett did. I'm sorry about that.
Mr. Snyder, do people come to you for your services?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you touch the people or anything that they bring along?
Yes.
Is it the people that you touch?
Yes, ma'am.
Both men and women?
No, I must say, to be fair, we have to give you a no.
But we already got a yes on that.
This is not to change the previous answer. This is a service which
rendered?
Women may certainly use, but in the case of Mr. Snyder himself, he would not be involved in it.
I see what you mean.
Mr. Snyder, there's a small point I have to clear up. When Mr. Daly introduced you, he said you were self-employed, and yet you told Mr. Hefner that you worked for a profit-making organization. Which is it?
Well, I think by our standard terms of reference, Bennett, actually anybody who is self-employed pro forma works for a profit-making organization. He's working for himself, in other words. The self-employed is merely to designate that he's not salaried and working for another organization, but he still hopes to make a profit, even though he's self-employed.
But
Mr. Snyder, Indiana, great farm state. Is there anything in your work connected with, in general, with farming?
no, sir.
Animals, farming, no?
No, I think we have to give you a no, Bennett. There is a very, very tenuous relationship between the farm and what Mr. Snyder does. It's so tenuous that I don't think we can give you a yes answer, Miss Francis.
Mr. Snyder, do you use your hands in your work?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Daly just said there was a faraway relationship between the farm and the farm here. He is not speaking by any chance of a farm that has to do with baseball farms, is he?
You want to tell her? You go ahead.
No.
No. That's right. 5 down and 5
I just said he isn't. I didn't say he
That's right,
is.
too. You said it isn't.
I said it isn't.
Well, I tried to get away with it. You couldn't. Miss Francis.
Now, when you work with your hands, Mr. Snyder, is there anything that you use in your hands apart from men?
Yes.
Well, because I understand that you touch people, and I presume the people that you touch are male.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have something in your hands when you're at work.
Mm-hmm.
I can rule out that it's a club.
Yeah.
Is the uniform that you wear, or whatever you wear that is unlike your business suit that you have on now, is it something that would be immediately recognizable to us? Would we know you as soon as would we know what you do as soon as we saw you in the outfit that you'd be wearing? I'd know him anywhere.
Come, John.
You mean the nature of the uniform?
Would it apply to what his work is? The nature of his
it would-
uniform, would it be peculiar to whatever his job is?
No. That makes it 5 down and 5 to go, Mr. Hefner.
Do you perform this service indoors?
Yes, sir.
You indicated that you have something else in your hands when you are dealing with your client. Is this service in any way related to clothing of any kind?
To clothing?
Clothing?
No. 6 down and 4 to go. I'm going to give you 1 more minute. Miss Kilgallen.
Well, I have to get it straightened out about the men and the women. Now, you have said that you touch the men, but you don't touch the women.
No, this is a service which is available to both men and women. In Mr. Schneider's case, it would be available, or rather, it would be made available to men.
Oh, to men only. I see.
Right.
Oh, that's so different. In other words, nothing to do with women at all.
The service is available to women
But
as
not-
generally as it is to men.
But
in
not-
Mr. Schneider's
but not by
case,
him.
That's right.
That's all I want to know. All right.
Women are the loser.
Are the men better looking after you finish with them?
Well, there's a school of thought, I understand. This is a hard one to answer, Dorothy. I would say the answer would have to be based pretty much on what I said. There's a school of thought that suggests that you might have an improvement in appearance with the service. What did you say?
I guess you could say that.
Yeah.
Well, do you make them move about?
No.
No, that makes it 7 down and 3 to go.
May I ask you, Mr. Snyder, when you are touching these men, are they rather in a vertical position rather than a horizontal one?
No,
Might
sir.
they be anything to do with barbering and what you do?
No. I'm going to say, actually, I think that you're going right around the block, and it's a very rare occupation, so that you should be proud of doing as well as you've done. Mr. Schneider gives mud baths. As a matter of fact, Dan and his brother run the Mud Lavia Hotel.
Right.
You can go and get mud chucked at you in great heaps, and it's therapeutic. And I believe, Dorothy, it is said in
Supposed
some
to look
circles
better.
that it improves the appearance.
Their theme song is Labia, Come Back to Me.
Well, it's spring. Thanks very much, Dan. You've been a very interesting contestant. Nice to have you on What's My Line. All right, let's meet our second contestant. Will you enter and sign in, please? Mary L. Dunlop, right? Is it Miss or Mrs. Dunlop?
Mrs.
Mrs. Dunlop, and where are you from, Mrs. Dunlop?
Wasco County, Oregon.
Wasco County, Oregon. It's nice to have you with us. May I present the panel? Mr. Dunlop, will you join me over here, please? You know how we keep score?
Yes.
All right, we'll let the audience at home and the audience in the theater know exactly what your line is. All right, panel. We'll tell you that Mrs. Dunlop is salaried and deals in a service. But to be perfectly fair, I must tell you that there is a product in very close interrelation to the service. Let's begin the general questioning with Dorothy Kilgallen.
Mrs. Dunlop, I know that Oregon produces a great deal of paper. May I rule out that you have anything to do with any paper mills?
Yes.
May I rule out nuts?
Yes.
All right.
And bolts.
You work for a profit-making organization?
No, I do not.
1 down and 9 to go, Mr. Cerf.
Mrs. Dunlop, you said you came from Wasco County.
Yes.
Now, would you tell us about what part of Oregon that is?
It's in the north central part.
What's the name of the city?
There is no city. There's a lot of farming goes on there and raising of apples and whatnot, is there not?
Yes.
Have you anything to do with a natural product?
Yes.
And you work for a non-profit making organization?
Yes.
Do you work for some governmental, state or governmental agency?
Yes.
Is it a state agency?
No, it is
Oh,
not.
damn.
Bennett, heavenly day. You know we never say darn on this program. But that's very good, Bennett. You open a lot of doors. 2 down and 8 to go, Miss Francis.
Now, to get back to this natural product, Mr. Cerf said something about apples, but nobody gurgled at that. So can we rule out apples?
Yes, you may.
May we? How do we feel about potatoes?
What is your question with regard to potatoes?
Do the eyes have it? No, no, no. No,
Oh, my.
no. Do you
Bennett.
have anything to do with the fisheries of Oregon?
Yes, I do.
There you are.
Salmon.
Salmon always go upstream in Oregon.
Steelhead.
In Portland, I remember seeing the salmon fisheries. Now, what could Mrs. Dunlop do?
Oh, I know.
She watches them jump.
Has there been any request for a conference, or are you all just letting spring go to your head? What?
May we have a conference?
You may have
please?
30 seconds for a
She
conference.
might be a wild game and life preservery fishery
She counts
type.
them. You know, they jump upstream when they go to spawn, and
I know
somebody
about
counts
that,
them as
Bennett.
they bounce up the bridge.
A federal job
They call them
to do with
steelheads.
preserving them.
Do you have something to do with the national preserves of the fisheries up there, Mrs. Dunlop?
Yes?
Yes, I think in the general sense we'd accept that.
Would you be vice president in charge of the wildlife?
No, I would not.
Vice president in charge of...
Well, of the
wild-
fisheries, do you have, I don't know what the title would be, commissioner or a...
Oh, the commissioner of fisheries for the state of Oregon?
I wouldn't fight him that way.
May I say to myself that Mrs. Dunlop does not waste her time counting the fish?
May you say that to yourself?
I'll be wrong, won't I, John?
You'll be as wrong as you can be. There's 3 down and 8 to go. And as a matter of fact, it reveals so much you're going to flip the rest of the cards. We all know now that Mrs. Dunlop does indeed count fish.
Yes.
Does count fish.
It's better than counting sheep.
Yes.
Yes. They don't jump as high. Actually, there are not any fences, are there?
No.
No, actually, Mrs. Dunlop is at the Dells, which is why we were evasive about the town. We were afraid that you'd get very quickly what it was we had in mind then. Works for the United States government and has a little, you have a little sort of a cubicle, like a...
Yes, we have a little house.
like a
with
telephone booth. A little house you're sitting in and counts the fish, and out of this counting can determine whether certain species are being damaged in some way because they're not so numerous, whether she picks the good jumpers out for the Olympics, you know, all that sort of thing. But it's a great job, and I think we gave them a lot of trouble, but not as much as I'd hoped. It's nice
Mrs.
to
Dunlop,
have-
could I ask one question?
Yes.
Are there any, we've had lots of arguments, we know there are lots of pink salmon. Are there any white salmon? Are there any salmon whose color is white?
No.
Only one that's been scared very badly.
They're very... Yeah, that's right.
Nice to have had you with us, ma'am. Hope you enjoyed your visit to us. We'll meet tonight's mystery guest in just a moment, but first, here is a word from our sponsor. Now we come to the special feature of our program, the appearance of our mystery celebrity. The panel, as usual, is asked to blindfold itself. All blindfolds in place, panel?
John.
Indeed they are.
Good. Will you enter mystery challenger and sign in, please? All right. Panel, as you all know, Mr. Hefner, I think you would also know this. We changed the form of questioning. You ask one question at a time in turn in this case, and we will begin it all with Bennett Cerf.
Would the Hollywood Reporter and the Hollywood edition of Variety be apt to mention your activities on their front page?
Oh, could I have that question again? I'm a little deaf.
Would the Hollywood trade papers be likely to mention your name on their front page?
On the front page? No, I don't think on the front page.
Well,
Right, John?
I think that our guest is being too modest. We would have to agree that his name would appear on the front page, yes. Miss Francis?
Our guest is making an effort to sound other than he is, I have a feeling. Is our guest, unlike being an elderly fellow, quite a young fellow?
I don't think so, no.
I'll fight to the death on the premise that he's a young man, yes.
And may we establish that he therefore plays probably leading parts in movies?
Oh, I don't know. No leading parts. I don't think I play leading parts.
Well, here again, I want to be fair and don't want to mislead you. I have known the occasion when our guest played leading parts.
I do want to mislead them. I don't see why they...
Miss Kilgallen?
Are you nearsighted?
The fact that I said I couldn't hear very well doesn't necessarily follow I'm near.
know,
No, I
mean,
am not nearsighted.
You don't wear glasses or contact lenses. Okay.
Mr. Cerf?
Did you have anything to do either as a winner or as a giver of a winning award in the recent Oscar competition?
Well, that seems to me to be two questions.
No, sir, it is not. I ask you if you had anything whatever to do with the recent Oscar awards in Santa Monica last Monday night.
You even know where they were held. Yes, I did.
Okay.
Miss Francis?
Well, were you a receiver rather than a giver of awards?
I've always preferred receiving than giving. Yes, I was.
It's better to receive than give.
Might this gentleman have some kind of face foliage of any kind, perhaps a beard?
Of any kind? No, I have a very specific kind.
It's a very specific kind, and you're right, Mr. Hefner.
I think this might be together. Peter Ustinov.
That's right.
I always thought I was a character actor.
You did very well, Peter. I must say, I think that if it hadn't been for the very recent fact of the Monday night performance where you so properly went up to get the Oscar that you won with your brilliant performance in Spartacus, they'd have had a lot more trouble because I think you had them
Spartacus, or was it the Sundowners?
It was Spartacus.
Spartacus, yeah.
You're better in the Sundowners.
Why, thank you.
Yes, Dorothy.
What I think is so marvelous is that Mr. Ustinov is able to imitate an American as well as he does. Of course, he does it on his record, if I may plug that, his sports car record, which is so wonderful. But it always amazes me. You know, you never think of an Englishman or someone with an English accent being able to do an American as well as he does.
Oh, I hope to give the impression I'd come hot afoot from Washington.
Well, you sounded as if you did.
Yes, I think you did. You sounded like you might have come from either house.
I tried to feel like a senator. I didn't succeed.
Well, you sounded a bit confused.
I think it would be nice to mention the fact that Peter Ustinov is probably here because he must be scoring his new picture, Romanoff and Juliet. Aren't you, Peter? Or have you finished with it?
We've got beyond that, yes.
What are you up to now?
It's opening at the end of May.
Oh, is it
beginning
so
of June.
soon? Oh, good.
Well, now, I know one thing, Peter, and I hope this doesn't bother you or embarrass you. I know that in many instances you are actor, writer, producer, and director. Are you all these on the new picture?
On the picture, yes, I am.
You wrote it?
And leading lady.
No, but I did have to make the noise of a door opening at one point. And,
how do you make the noise of a door opening?
No, because I'll tell you the end of the story, because I was just leaving. I thought I'd finished the film when they phoned me from the studio urgently and said, you've got to come back because the door shuts and nothing happens. So I had to rush back to the studio, look at myself on the screen, look at the door and go,
Well, may I say, we are signally honored, and I mean it sincerely to have you here with us tonight. I can't think of any award that was given out last Monday night that was so universally approved. And congratulations on it, sir.
Thank you very
nice
much.
to have you in What's My Life. We'll be back after this word from our alternate sponsor. And therefore, things having been concluded, good night, Arlene Francis.
Good night, John. It was nice to have you with us, Mr. Hefner. Good night.
Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure being with you. Good night.
Good night, Hugh. Come again. Good night, Bennett.
Hugh, I want to ask you about a playmate named Joyce Nazari after the show. Meanwhile, good night to you, Mr. Daly.
He thinks he's going to get a quarter for all the puns he didn't get in tonight, but he's not. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us on What's My Line?
What's My Line is a CBS Television Network production in association with Mark Goodson and Bill Todman. Guard your family from cancer with an annual checkup and a generous check to your local unit of the American Cancer Society.
What's My Line?